It is Friday morning, and I hope that you are having a wonderful, wonderful start to the weekend. It again is a beautiful Friday morning here at Lake of the Ozarks. The sun is out. It was nice and cool and crisp this morning, and then it'll get nice and warm this afternoon. So I've been enjoying that weather for sure. I hope you have been. I don't really love how dark it is in the morning right now because I like to go for a run before I come on my show. It helps get all the juices flowing, and it's dark. So I feel like I'm almost ready for the time change, which of course then it gets darker earlier. But, you take what you get when you get it, I guess. And then that just makes us enjoy our long days in the summer better, I think. So the leaves are changing here. It's just such a beautiful time of year around the lake. If you are not from Lake of the Ozarks, you should definitely come visit. Or if you haven't been here in a while, you should come visit because it really is beautiful here this time of year. It's going to be a fun show today. I feel a little bit, actually, I feel a lot heated up. There's things going on locally around here that are really spicing me up. And of course, there are things nationally that are spicing everybody up. So it's going to be a fun show today. I hope that you enjoy it with me. If you decide you want to call in and share in the spice with me, 573-746-8020. You can chat with me for a little bit before our guest comes on today. Timothy Faber will be with us in a little bit because there are two amendments that are going to be on the Missouri ballot to amend our Missouri Constitution. One of them being to legalize sports betting. The other one to add another casino license, basically here at the lake is where the parameters are. And there are lots of plans for that. So we're going to dive into a lot more of that later, and I will share my frustration with you then. But for now, I wanted to talk a little bit about FEMA. As I'm sure most of you know, they're in the news right now. There's a lot of devastation happening, honestly, on lots of parts of our country, East Coast, Southern East Coast, and then out with the fires. And on the West Coast, or not West Coast, but out West. And I've been thinking a lot about FEMA. And as I've gotten older and really started to learn more about government and the way it was originally intended to work, and I've learned more about the founding fathers and the Constitution, I am really curious why we as Americans have allowed organizations like FEMA to operate for as long as we have. I'm not really sure. I understand probably the thought behind it when it first started, that, it's to help care for the people of the country. However, I don't really believe that was the founding fathers' intention, to force people's taxes to go help people. And that's essentially what FEMA is. Our tax dollars fund FEMA, and then FEMA steps in when there's a disaster, or they're supposed to. And then the rest, around the country, we're like, oh, there's a disaster, but FEMA's going to take care of it. No, I really don't think that was the way it was intended to work. And you're welcome to call in and tell me if that's wrong. But it seems to me like the more government agencies there are, the more of our tax dollars are being put towards those government agencies, the more people become dependent on them, the less neighbors care for neighbors. Now, that's not at all what we have seen in North Carolina, which I think is amazing. And the stories of what's going on there, first of all, is heartbreaking, but also so sweet to hear and oftentimes see of neighbors coming together and helping each other. And I'm not just saying neighbors like your next door neighbor, I'm saying neighbors all over the country. You know, when the American Revolution happened, the colonies were all their own individual area. They really were not united at all. They really cared about themselves. And then after the Boston Tea Party, when England said, well, you know, we're closing down your port until you pay back all of the damage that was done. And that was really damaging to Boston. I mean, there was so much coming into that port. And so the colonies rallied around Boston and said, we have to do something. We cannot allow our fellow colonists to suffer like this. And so it really brought them together. And then, you know, after the several years and lots of bloodshed, they became the United States. And I really believe that that is the way that we're still intended to work, especially among Christians. That is exactly what we're called to do, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to go when there is need, to serve these people. It is not the government's job to dictate how much money we're supposed to put into a fund, and then the government decides how that fund is going to be spent. I mean, clearly, they're not being very responsible with our money. And I don't know of any situation where I would give my money to someone to manage and they would mismanage it horribly. I mean, like to the nth degree, and I would continue to give them my money. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why we are not standing against that. I'm not calling for insurrection. I am calling for strength. Why are we not standing up against the people who are mismanaging our money and who are completely destroying our country? Oh, actually, we can do that in 25 days. You can absolutely do that. You can stand up for what is right. You can stand up for our country, for the benefit of our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You can stand up for the benefit of your neighbors. If you don't, I mean, maybe you don't have kids. I'm sure there are people in your life that you care about. Stand up for them. Go and vote to save our country. Let's get this nonsense that has been the last 4 years, which really has been, you know, honestly, it's been in the making for the past century. Late 1800s, early 1900s is very interesting history. But, I mean, really, there's been so much in these past 4 years. I'm sure that you all know what I'm talking about. We have an opportunity to take things back, to stand up for what's right. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Some gentlemen that I listen to that I really respect were trying to help people understand, like, you cannot go into this election or any election thinking this vote is going to change everything. That's not how it happens. And if you go into an election thinking that, then you're going to be discouraged, and it will probably make you feel like, why should I continue to vote? It doesn't do any good. Yeah, because change is not going to happen with one vote. Change happens over the course of many years by continuing to elect the person that's going to get you closer to the goal that you want in 25 years. And maybe that goal isn't for you. Maybe that goal is for your kids or your grandkids. I definitely think that should be a very deciding factor in who you're voting for, because we can't continue to live in just this right now mentality. We can't have an instant gratification election. That's not how it's going to work. You have to go and vote as a patriot, someone who cares and is making decisions for the future, and not as a politician, someone who cares only about that election cycle. That's not to say that there can't be politicians who are patriots, but most politicians think about that election cycle. How can we win this election cycle? We have to stop this madness. We have to stand up for our country, or we will not have any of these freedoms that we love so much and have taken for granted for so many years. You know, I heard several years ago when I was pretty involved with some overseas missions stuff. I wasn't physically overseas, but I was doing a lot of, just kind of educating here, groundwork within churches and stuff, helping people just understand there's more going on than just your own little world, and we need to remember to keep our entire world in prayer, especially our fellow believers who are sacrificing everything to go to different countries to share the gospel. But listen, America is a launching pad for that. Because of the freedom and the privilege that all Americans have, we are able to send hundreds and thousands of workers into the mission field. If that is taken away from America, the whole world is going to suffer. So we have to remember, it's not just about here and now. It's not just about our country. It's not just about our time on this earth. It is about the future to come. And thankfully, the founding fathers had that foresight, and we need to be good stewards of what they worked hard and sacrificed so much to give. And also just the fact that God put you in this country for a reason. It's a very important time to be here. He did not make a mistake when he did that. You are responsible for the duty. He is responsible for the results. We can't get caught up in what the results are, but we absolutely should be vigilant and determined in our duty as Christians, as American citizens, as parents. And we should pass that on to the future generations. And Timothy is calling. Good morning, Timothy.
Good morning, Nadine. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm just solving all the problems in the last 15 minutes, so we're good.
Good.
Yeah.
You solve all the problems?
I did. Yeah, well,
all
mostly.
the problems in the lake area, all the problems in the world, all the problems in...
I mean, we were getting into the world when you called, but mostly, yeah, I had solved all the problems like with FEMA and things like that, so.
Oh, cool. So can we vote for Nadine Kelsey for president in 2028?
Not a chance. You know, when I've gotten really involved in specifically local politics this year. And I was just thinking last night, I was like, yeah, I still have no desire to run for politics. I mean, there was a small part of me that thought about it a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
And in this past year, I was like, no, I think that I'm better like on the outside activating instead of on the inside.
Well, you are good at that. The
So,
outside activating. So
yeah. Yeah. Well, how's your morning going so far?
it's been kind of a slow start to the morning. Very busy day yesterday, so I'm glad I had a slow start this morning.
Absolutely.
Probably
Yeah.
couldn't have done a fast start if I had to.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that for sure. Well, Timothy, I appreciate you calling in, and we have some spicy things to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. I hadn't told anyone what we were going to talk about yet. I left that carrot dangling. So we are going to discuss Amendment 2, which would legalize sports betting in the state of Missouri.
Hmm.
And I know that you have some insight on that, so why don't you, I guess first, I'm going to read the ballot language so that way people know what it says, and then we'll go from there. Does that sound good?
Okay,
Okay.
sure.
Amendment 2, the official ballot title is, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to allow the Missouri Gaming Commission to regulate licensed sports wagering, including online sports betting, gambling boats, professional sports betting districts, and mobile licenses to sports betting operators? Restrict sports betting to individuals physically located in the state and over the age of 21. Allow license fees prescribed by the commission and a 10% wagering tax on revenues received to be appropriated for education after expenses incurred by the commission and required funding of the Compulsive Gambling Prevention Fund, and allow for the General Assembly to enact laws consistent with this amendment. So that is the ballot title. And the amendment itself, I was actually really surprised at how long the amendment was for that. It's like is it 8 pages? Yeah, it's 8 pages.
It's seven or eight
7.
pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that little section, and this again is one of the issues with amending our Constitution, is you're going in and you're voting on basically, a paragraph, and it adds 7 pages to the Constitution. So,
Right.
yep.
Missouri already has the longest state constitution in the country.
Yeah, it's
Of
ridiculous.
course, we added 38 pages with marijuana.
Right.
The Constitution, in my opinion, is to lay out principles, and then statute takes care of the details and specifics.
Yep.
But what we see happening here, as with marijuana, as with some other things that are coming down the pike, is they're wanting to legislate through the Constitution
Mm,
and put so many specifics in there that it basically handcuffs the state legislature from being able to respond to changing scenarios, because the Constitution is supposed to be a lot tougher to change than statutes.
right. Yeah.
So this ballot language is, of course, they always make the ballot language sound better than reality.
No.
When you read that 7 pages, you're going to find a lot of stuff in there like, what and
Mm-hmm. Right.
why? And
Right.
so yeah.
So let's break down what I'm just going to, like, what I think the lie is that they try and use to get people to vote for it, and that is that it goes to education. So let's break that down. Is there an increase in funding to education through sports betting?
Well, it would be hard for me to say no, absolutely not. But I can very easily say that there's no guarantee that it will.
Hmm.
The state auditor's office is required to do a fiscal review on every bill that the legislature does, and on constitutional amendments and initiative petitions and stuff like that. So if we go to the state auditor's office and look up the fiscal review for IP 24-160, which is this amendment, initiative petition, year 24, number 160,
Okay.
we find some interesting things. The Department of Revenue, in particular, because they get information from all the different departments, how it's going to affect their department and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the Department of Revenue notes that while the proposal appears to allow the commission to set the retail license fee amount and to issue the licenses, it does not give the commission the necessary authority to actually collect the retail license fee or to deposit the fees into any state fund. The proposal also does not give collection authority or deposit authority to any other agency, including the department. Therefore, it appears that these retail license fees will not generate any revenue to the state, the commission, meaning the Gaming Commission, or to the Compulsive Gambling Prevention Fund. And that's straight from the Department of Revenue reported in the fiscal notes.
Okay, so I'm going to break this down for my brain. um, the ballot language says that these funds are going to go to these places, right? But what you're saying is when the state auditor's office looked at the actual amendment, they found that there was no authority given to the authorities to collect these funds that supposedly are supposed to be going to them. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. That's what the state auditor's fiscal review reports.
So why would they write an amendment like that?
Because they want to deceive people into voting yes for it. Because the ballot language says, oh yeah, we're going to give money to education. So they can say we're going to give money to education, but there's no authority to make that happen. It's an empty promise.
Okay. Are there other amendments that have been like that? Do you know?
Well, when we passed the lottery, when we passed the casinos, when we,
Okay.
I mean, I've not gone back and looked at the wording of those because they were, I was much younger then, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
They, as far as this cycle, there's some things in Amendment 5 that are very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
But, we don't want to confuse 5 with 2 right now, I don't think.
Right. I mean, they are very similar, although they would kind of do different things. I mean, we can go ahead and jump into 5 if you want, or we can stay with 2. I
wouldn't mind covering 5, but for my own sake, my brain will turn to mush if we bounce back and forth from one to the other.
So I'm still new-ish to local politics, especially, and I'm trying to wrap my mind around how an amendment can be written and then verified by the Secretary of State's office, because that's what they would need to do, correct? Like the amendment,
yes.
That's part of the initiative petition process. So how can an amendment like this be verified by the Secretary of State's office while the auditor's basically saying it's not legitimate? I mean, it's not actually going to do what it's saying it's going to do. Why is it being verified?
Like opening cans of worms, don't you? You really like opening cans of worms.
I told you it was going to get spicy.
So the Secretary of State's office is charged with the responsibility, number 1, of checking to see if a law or proposed amendment is in conflict with anything else that's out there.
Okay.
and then they have to verify the signatures.
Mm-hmm.
And typically the signatures are, like 1 out of every 5 or something. They don't typically verify every single signature, which I think they should personally. But
Yeah.
um,
Especially when it's changing our Constitution.
right, right. Then the Secretary of State's office will write the ballot language.
Mm-hmm.
Then people have the opportunity to decide if they like that ballot language, and if they don't, they can take the Secretary of State's office to court. For instance, in Amendment 3, Jay Ashcroft, our Secretary of State, wrote ballot language that said, something about abortions and unsafe procedures and lacking parental consent and whatever. And the people who were pushing for Amendment 3, the out-of-state fundraisers and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
didn't like that because obviously it was too honest
Right.
and it would let people know what Amendment 3 is really going to do. So they took Jay Ashcroft to court, Secretary of State's office to court, and the court sided with the proponents of Amendment 3.
Mm-hmm.
We have a problem in Missouri with our court system because even though our governor gets to appoint a justice to the state Supreme Court, he is only allowed to pick from nominees that are provided to him.
Right.
And the nominees are provided to him by a board that has representatives from the Missouri Bar Association and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and 2 citizens at large. So, number one, you have the Chief Justice on the board that recommends nominees to the court. That's conflict of interest,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's interesting.
And then you have members, I don't remember how many, I want to say 3, but I could be wrong, from the Missouri Bar Association, whom they select, and then so you've got a majority of other attorneys putting forth nominees for the governor to pick, and the governor can't pick whoever he wants.
Right.
And so we have in Missouri a court that leans much further to the left than most of the people in Missouri lean.
Right.
So the Supreme Court then can look at the ballot language when there's a lawsuit, and they can modify or force the Secretary of State to use certain ballot language to their liking, regardless of how accurate or honest it may be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we get the ballot language that sometimes is not an accurate rendering of what the amendment would do.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry for such a long answer, but I don't know any other way to explain it.
No, that's, yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, a lot of what I try to do on this show is make sure people are well educated about all the ins and outs so that way we can hopefully understand a little bit better when you go to the ballots. So I guess, though, my question is still the Secretary of State's office saw the amendment, correct?
Yes. I mean, we can presume they did. That's their job. So.
And they and they never, I mean, and I don't know the specifics about this one, but from what I do know, there wasn't any challenge from the Secretary of State's office regarding the amendment after they heard the auditor's report saying, yeah, this is basically not going to do what it's saying it's going to do, and yet they still allowed the amendment. Because as far as I know,
Right.
there wasn't any challenge in the courts or anything for Amendment 2.
I don't recall any either. There may have been, and it flies under the radar or something, but I don't recall any either. But a cursory reading of the amendment by the Secretary of State's office or by an average citizen like you or I is one thing. But the Department of Revenue, the Department of Economic Development, Department of Education, the highway patrol. I mean, all these different departments contribute to these fiscal reviews.
Right.
And so the Department of Revenue in particular, looking at, okay, are we going to get some tax money? They're looking at it with a lot more scrutiny, perhaps, than what the Secretary of State's office would have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I might actually call the Secretary of State's office later today and just ask him about it, because I just find it very interesting, the whole process of the amendments in the first place, and the more that I've learned about Amendment 3 and how all of that worked, which we're not going to get into all the weeds of that. But it's just I just want to know, so that way I can have I can make a well-informed decision moving forward. I want to know
Right.
what's actually going on, which I think most people do. And sometimes it's just hard to get really good, accurate information, even
Right.
though we live
Well,
in a time with
what I
lots of
read earlier
information.
from what I read earlier from the fiscal review is from the Department of Revenue.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to the state auditor's website, look up fiscal review 24-160, and anybody can read it themselves. It's right there. But if we were to say, okay, this sports betting bill, Amendment 2, forget the fiscal review, let's say it does provide funding for education the way that
Yes.
they claim that it will. Okay? If we take the amount of money that they say that it's going to raise, then go to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website. Look at the number of students in Missouri that are in public schools. 884,587 students in public schools this year. That's from K through 12.
Okay.
You take the amount of money they promise with Amendment 2. Do you know how much money it would factor out to be for each student?
I have no idea.
Take a wild guess.
Well, I was looking through what the ballot says the tax revenue would be, and now I'm okay. Let me think here.
You want me to give you a hint?
Yeah.
You can't buy a decent dinner for it.
So like $10.
20. Well, no, you can't even buy a good appetizer for that.
I know. You can't really buy a kid's meal for $10 anymore.
Yeah, really. No, if you take the amount of money they're proposing, that they're promising,
Mm-hmm.
if that promise were fulfilled, it would amount to $23.74 per student in Missouri public schools.
Huh.
If
That's
you say, well, we're
very
going to give that,
interesting.
if they say, well, we're going to give that to teachers for teacher pay, great. If you go again to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website, see how many public school teachers there are. Divide the amount of money they promise that we're going to get from Amendment 2. Do you know how much will go to each teacher? $315.10.
A year?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about you, but that's not even a car payment.
No.
That's not one car payment. That's, might cover 2 months of your electric bill. That $315 a year.
Yeah.
That's less than $30 a month for teacher pay.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand this, because just looking at the ballot language, not going into the amendment, it says that they estimate unknown tax revenue ranging from $0 to $28.9 million annually, which is a very wide range. I mean, 0 to 28.
So in that regard, the Secretary of State's office has been honest, because it could be $0.
Right. So what number did you say is what they're promising?
The 28.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
If you go to the highest extreme of the anticipated revenue,
And
it
you
would
broke it
amount
down.
to $315 per teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if the teachers that are supporting this know that.
Well, I could say something about math and public education, but I won't.
Well, but Timothy, if they got this money, then all of that would improve. Don't you know that? Because if you just give more money to the schools, then they'll get better. Because more
How's
money
that worked
fixes
out for
it.
us the last 30 years?
Yeah, exactly. That
With
and
more revenue and lower test scores.
right, exactly. And that's my morals aside. Like if we're only talking about finances, when has
Uh-huh.
more money to a government agency ever fixed anything? It doesn't fix anything. It just makes certain people get richer, basically.
Yep.
So even if you're trying to argue the finance side of it as to why it's so good for a community, it still doesn't hold any water. But I just hope that people don't keep falling for this.
Well, I hope you're right. Um, there's the moral issue, there's the financial issue,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then there's other issues to consider as well.
Right.
The if we look at let's say you're a family that has 3 kids in public school, the average bettor, and you like to sports bet, you like to place bets on the Cardinals or the Royals or the
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs or whoever. Okay. Um, if you're a betting person, towards the end of the summer, you could bet the Cardinals would lose and make more money than betting that they would win. But well, that's a whole other topic. Um,
Burn.
but the average bet placed in sports betting is $25.
Mm-hmm.
The average person who bets in sports betting is spending $2,500. Um, so
Wow.
so that's the average. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now, if you're going to spend, and I'm by spending, I'm talking about that's how much money you're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing $2,500 a year in sports betting, so that your 3 kids can get less than $75 worth of benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the good math in that? I mean,
Right.
the logic in that.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting because the past few days I've been trying to do a little bit of research into other states who have legalized sports betting, and just doing a normal Google search. I was not on any other kind of a search engine, just Google. It is not there's really not a lot of great things to say about the states who have legalized sports betting. And these are articles from like the Washington Post and CNN and then some other random sites. But it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like these are conservative leaning, which I guess that doesn't even matter with sports betting. But it's just regular sites that are giving the statistics on the states that have legalized sports betting, and what the majority of them have found is yes, there might be some sort of in like a tax revenue increase, but it's not near what they were promised it was going to be. And also, it has created such an increase in other areas like, mental health and addiction and all of these other
Oh yeah.
things that
Oh, you want to
really,
get into addiction on sports betting?
yeah, I mean,
You
and
realize that?
that's what they're saying is like it's really not been a benefit to the states that have done it.
Right, right. Do you realize, Nadine, that sports bettors are 3 times more likely to develop a gambling addiction
Mm.
than people who gamble in other forms, whether it be lottery or casinos or whatnot?
You think that's just because, I mean, you think of because of the ease of it, because of the like camaraderie, maybe like you're egging your buddies on, or what? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think both of those are part of it. People are addicted to our phones already.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would argue that. So if you put the ability to gamble on your phone,
Mm.
think of how much more gambling a person's going to do than if they have to drive to the casino or, even going into a convenience store to buying a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
So this actually brings gambling right into our living room, right into the palm of our hand with our phones. And people are watching a game and they're like, man, they need to take the pitcher out. I bet they need to. I bet they're going to take the pitcher out after this batter. Boom, there's $5.
Mm,
Or hey, I think Mahomes is going to do a pass here instead of a running play,
mm-hmm.
and I'm going to bet 10. And so it becomes so addictive, and there's such a quick return. You
Yeah.
buy a lottery ticket, you might have to wait a day or two to see if you got the right numbers. But with sports betting, I mean, it can just be almost instantaneous,
Right.
and it feeds into that addictive behavior.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, and the other side of it too that I was reading about a lot of with a lot of colleges with sports betting in that arena too is that these college kids are, how did they say it? I mean, basically, like, these college athletes can very easily fall prey to the betting world and be influenced by it, was basically what they were saying. Was like, so there needs to be parameters with college sports betting, and then parameters with not betting on specific players, and parameters with not betting on specific plays. Which, honestly, my thought kind of is, if the government is going to allow something, then I don't know that they should put that much regulation with it. I mean, because it's not a good thing to begin with, and then you're going to just try and regulate it as much as possible. Just don't do it in the first place.
well, I would agree not to do it in the first place, but I would disagree if they're going to allow it. Let's restrict it so much that it dies its own death.
Well, yeah. that that would be a benefit. Right.
Um, you're talking about these college athletes. There was a school down in Louisiana that contracted with one of the gaming platforms. I don't remember which university it was. But then this gaming platform sent out messages to all of the students, on this game, here's the stats and whatnot. And it actually caused some students under the age of 21 or whatever it was
Mm-hmm.
to start placing bets. And the
Mm-hmm.
law was, you have to be 21 in order to bet. So in a university setting, you've got these kids who are, some of them might be old enough to legally bet, some of them wouldn't be. But
Right.
the younger ones were being drawn into that.
Right.
Um, and another thing, not just in college sports, but in our professional sports, the whole integrity of the game
Yep.
is in danger. Even though they have regulations on players betting on games that their team is involved in and specifically that they're playing in or whatnot. We've all heard stories of Pete Rose.
Mm-hmm.
The gentleman died a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sorry for the loss, but he was kicked out of Major League Baseball back in the day. And back in the day, baseball commissioner, football commissioners, they all said, sports betting is not a thing that we would ever support.
Right.
We'll never support it and stuff. And now they're all pushing for it.
Right.
But just since 2018, when the Supreme Court began to allow sports betting, there have been 3 players in Major League Baseball, um, 3 players in Major League Football, 1 player in the National Basketball Association. That's just the ones I've been able to track down so far. 7 players that have been banned for life from their respective sports because they were gambling. And that's even with
Wow.
regulations in place. And that's just the ones who got caught. Now, if you can bet,
Mm.
$100,000 on a game, and I can throw this game
Yep.
by intentionally fumbling the football or intentionally striking out or
Yep.
whatever the case might be. Um, what happened to the integrity of the sport?
Absolutely. Right. And, it was, I mean, it was not that many years ago. What was it? Maybe like 5, that football commission was adamantly against sports betting. And then it was just like, poof, all of a sudden, yes, like you said, they're all pushing for it now. And it just, so
Yeah,
why, what, I mean, I can, deduct my own reasoning, but why do you think that is? Why do you think that that was that major switch?
Greed, money.
Meaning how? So like the NFL commission is getting a kickback from the sports betting?
Yep.
Yeah.
If you'll look at the Amendment 2, it allows for licenses for online platforms like DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever. It allows for licenses for people to play sports bets while they're on a casino, and it would allow um, licenses for the major sporting districts in our state. So Busch Stadium, Kauffman Stadium, Arrowhead Stadium, the new place in St. Louis where they're going to be playing Major League Soccer.
Oh, right.
Those any stadium that holds more than 11,500 people, if I remember right, would be allowed to have a license for sports betting. Well, guess where
Wow.
that money's going? Yeah, the Cardinals, the Chiefs, the Royals, they'll all start getting a cut
Mm-hmm.
of the profits.
Which that also leads me to think, I mean, sports organizations are already making a ton of money in our country. And now it's like, it's just not enough. Let's try and figure out how we can get even more. I mean, they're already making so much money.
Uh-huh.
Mm, yikes. Okay, so I have to go this route a little bit because what would you say to people who, kind of defend the sports betting with it's a person's not right, but it's a person's own, it's a personal decision, basically, if they want to sports bet or not. And so the government should not be trying to regulate that.
Well, first of all, I'd say the government regulates a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people live in homeowners associations, which I personally will never buy a house in a homeowners association
Yep.
because they can tell you what color to paint your house and whether or not you can park your car in the driveway or in the garage. So
Mm-hmm.
so there's, but then the same people complain that they don't have the freedom to do something else,
Right.
and I just don't understand that. But um, the government itself is designed to regulate things. I might say, well, I'm very angry, and so I should have the right to punch somebody in the nose. Well, the government's going to restrict me from doing that. There's going to be consequences if I do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, so all of our decisions have to be balanced between personal freedom and personal responsibility. If there's no responsibility to accompany our freedom, we have anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So while a person may have the freedom to do something, and people can go to the break room at work and say, hey, I bet the Chiefs are going to win again this weekend.
Yeah.
I'll bet you $20. And somebody's like, no, I don't think they can do 6 in a row. I'll take the other side.
Yeah.
Um, they have the freedom to do that. Still not wise. I can think of a lot better things I'd rather do with my $20.
Mm-hmm.
But when you open the door to this online sports betting stuff, while it may be a person's freedom, if a person wants to argue that, and remember, the vast majority of sports bettors are men.
Mm-hmm.
So a man has a responsibility to provide for his home, his family, right?
Yep.
But if we open this door to this, and he's going to spend money that should go to buy his kids a new pair of sneakers, or should go to buy, uh, his daughter field trip or whatever, or if he's gets addicted to it, maybe that's a mortgage payment or a car payment,
Mm-hmm.
and so it undermines the responsibility aspect of things.
Right.
Um, to to put some statistics to that, um, sports bettors are 3 times more likely to develop gambling addiction. And did you know that of sports bettors, 57% of them use a credit card.
To make their bet.
Uh-huh.
I think I had
You,
seen something about that. Yeah. I was
do you know what the average debt is for a sports bettor? Not debt from normal life, like
right.
buying a
Right.
house or something. The
Gambling debt.
gambling debt for
Mm.
the average sports bettor who is addicted to sports betting is between $55,000 and $90,000.
Wow.
How
That's
can
a
that
lot of
be
money.
responsible? That's like building a swimming pool and not putting a fence around it.
Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. It's just it's just still one of those things that I don't understand how it's switched. The mentality of this arena switched so fast. I mean, it's so much like other things in our country with the transgender movement. It's like, you know, not even 5 years ago, honestly, at least here in the Midwest, would we have been having these conversations, and now we have it on our ballot. And it's just like, oh my word, how does it fall so fast?
Well, that would take a whole nother
I
conversation to
know.
explain.
I know. It does. Yeah. I mean, I just keep saying, Lord, come quickly.
It's
we're
yeah,
we're
for
ready.
sure, for
Okay.
sure.
So I do
So
want
you
to
mentioned,
go ahead.
honestly, you mentioned earlier about the surrounding states,
Mhm.
and it is true that every state that surrounds Missouri, with the exception of Oklahoma, has some form of sports betting. There's 38 states across the country that have sports betting legalized right now. But here's one example. In Ohio, when Ohio legalized sports betting, the first month that it became legal, January of 2023, their calls to their problem gambling hotline increased by 300%
In the first month?
in the first month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because 58% of the men who do sports betting self report that they have mental health issues because of it.
Oh my goodness. That's awful.
It's feeding a poison into our society.
Mhm. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I had no idea. That's awful. I don't want that here. I mean, I hope
Oh, I
other
don't either.
Missourians agree. Like, we don't want that here. There's
Right.
already enough issues going on in every state. We don't need to add to it.
Right. We need to keep Missouri a place where while we have freedom, we also have responsibility.
Yeah.
And where we don't have people having mental health issues because of some addiction that was provided for us by our government.
Mhm.
And it
Right.
will destroy families, it will destroy communities, and in the long run, it's going to destroy our economics, and it's not going to benefit our schools.
Right. Yeah. Definitely not.
I mean,
So,
when I was a kid, nobody got free breakfast at school. Very few kids got free lunch.
mhm.
Okay, why are we giving free breakfast to kids at school?
I have been asking that for years.
Because the parents either can't or won't provide it.
Yep. It's also
La-
it's extremely convenient to drop your kid off early in the morning and not really have to do anything for them the whole
okay,
day.
and that may be true. I can remember being a parent who raised 4 kids, but if the schools were not providing free lunches and free breakfasts to all the kids, wouldn't the schools have more money for actual education?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have families who are going deeper in debt and have higher levels of anxiety because of gambling, those kids are going to come to school with greater needs.
Mm-hmm.
The schools are going to have to spend money to help meet those needs that the parents aren't meeting. So whatever little revenue they may get from the
Right.
gambling bills is not going to actually improve education. It's going to be used to meet the basic needs of the kids who are suffering because the parents have become addicted to gambling.
Yeah, and I mean that leads into a whole nother can of worms that it's not the school's responsibility to raise your kid.
Exactly.
I mean, that is not at all what the school is supposed to be spending their money on.
No, not at all.
Right. I do excuse me, I do want to talk a little bit about Amendment 5 if you're ready to move on to that.
Sure.
Especially because I was furious. And I mean, like, I get really passionate about stuff, but I don't get like furious about a lot of things. And when I drove into the lake area Wednesday, I think it was, and I started seeing Yes on 5 early childhood literacy signs strategically placed in certain locations around the lake, I was so angry because that is extremely deceptive. And I cannot, even if I was in favor of Amendment 5, which is the casino,
Uh-huh.
that would 100% turn me off because it's so deceitful that it really would make me question who the person is behind Amendment 5. And if they're willing to be that deceptive to get you to vote for something, what are their true intentions in putting this thing into my community in the first place? I
Well,
cannot believe how deceptive it is.
Nadine,
Yes.
you know who is behind Amendment 5.
I know.
He's a local businessman
I know.
who is behind Amendment 5.
Yep.
And yes, that kind of advertising is absolutely deceitful and demonstrates a total lack of integrity.
Yep.
But the other part of Amendment 5, I mean, the way it's written, you know, for early childhood literacy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When we talk about early childhood education, we're typically talking about preschool and not elementary education.
Right.
You know, if you go to college and you get a degree in early childhood education, it's for dealing with toddlers,
Right.
right? Now, toddlers can learn the alphabet. My kids knew the alphabet before they started kindergarten, and some of them were reading a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
by and large, early childhood education, early childhood literacy, um, is not something that requires a huge infusion of money.
Right.
Okay. The second thing is, like with Amendment 2, the way this amendment is written, there's no guarantee that money is going to early childhood education.
Right.
The other 13 casinos that we have in Missouri, their tax revenue goes into something called the Gaming Proceeds for Education Fund. It's a fund set up within the state treasurer's office, and it is appropriated to our elementary, secondary, and higher education institutions around the state of Missouri. Now, yes, that money comes in, and then the state legislature pulls general revenue money out, so there's no real increase, but
Mm-hmm.
at least there's a proper accounting of it, right?
Right.
So the way this bill is written, it's going to go to early childhood education. And yes, they say there's going to be a report from the state auditor's office, and the state treasurer is going to keep track of, but it does not specify where that money is going. Is it
So,
going to the gaming fund
okay.
for education? Don't know. Is it going directly to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education? Don't know.
Hmm.
Is it going to Dolly Parton's Imagination Library? Possibly. Who knows? Because the language of the legislature, or the language of the amendment, does not specify that.
Interesting.
Hmm.
So, oh, so not only, man, I just get so upset with, it's one thing if you're to just come out and say, hey, we really want to make a lot of money and we know that a casino can help us make a lot of money. So we're going to just move forward and put one in here. And it doesn't really matter if the community wants it. It doesn't matter if it's good for the community. We just want to make a lot of money. I would honestly have some respect for that. I still wouldn't vote for it, but I would at least have some respect for it because they're being honest. They're being
Right.
very upfront about
Right.
their intentions. They're not trying to deceive anyone. The fact is, on their yes on 5 signs, they don't say anything about a casino because they know that people don't want it here. The
Right.
overwhelming majority of people do not want it, and they're just plowing forward with it anyway with deceitful tactics to try and get votes.
Yep. Very
But
deceptive.
so what you're saying though in the amendment, other casinos, the other 13 casinos in Missouri, their funds specifically state that they go into the gaming proceeds for education fund. But with
Correct.
this amendment, it does not say in there anywhere where the funds are actually going to go.
Correct.
Does it give it, like, in amendment 2 how we were talking about it doesn't give anyone the authority to collect anything? Is that the same kind of situation with amendment 5, or are things done differently with that?
I've not gotten into the fiscal review for Amendment 5 as closely
Okay.
as I have with Amendment 2. Um, I can tell you with Amendment 5, so the revenue is broken down in several different ways. First of all, there's the licensing fees
Mm-hmm.
that the casino has to have. And then they have to pay the gaming commission a certain amount, each year because of increased costs for the highway patrol and security and whatnot, and all this kind of stuff. So the and I believe you can see this in the fair ballot language. It might be in the amendment, but the anticipated annual cost of the licensing fees, et cetera, compared to the estimated annual revenue from the casinos to provide those expenses to the gaming commission, there's a difference of $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So even if money is going into education, early childhood literacy, just the overhead of fees and whatnot, licensing and stuff, is going to cost the state $100,000 more than the casino would be paid.
Good grief.
Doesn't take a PhD in economics to figure that one out,
Right. Do you
and that's
think
not a good deal.
Do you think the majority of people, when they go in to vote, if they've not done any studying or anything about the ballot, the amendments, nothing, if they haven't heard anything about it, do you think most people actually read the ballot language, or do you think they just go in and vote on an amendment?
I'm not sure what most people think when they go to the ballot box.
Yeah.
My guess is, well, it used to be a lot of people would just go in to vote.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the one good thing about all of the controversies in our society today is it is making people pay attention a little bit more than they used to. But I still think there's a lot of people who will just go in and check a box without
Mm-hmm.
reading
Right.
it. And sadly, even if they read the fair ballot language, do they really know what they're voting on?
Right. That was kind of like a twofold question that I really was just curious what you were thinking, if people are even reading it, but then if they are reading it, if that's even helpful for them. Cause I know back before I was really paying attention to politics and I would go to vote and I had no idea there were going to be amendment questions on the ballot. and I would try and read it, and I was just like, I have no idea what this means. And I can imagine that that's pretty typical of most people, that even if they read it, they don't understand really what it means. And like we talked about with Amendment 2, you're only seeing a long paragraph about what, and 8 pages are actually going to be put into the amendment, or 7 pages are actually going to be put into the Constitution. It just is
Right.
such a messed up process.
Well, yeah, our legislature really needs to do something about IP
Yes,
reform,
absolutely.
but that's a topic for another day.
Yep.
We have to deal with what's before us
Right.
right now.
Right.
There's something else in this ballot language. The ballot language says a yes vote will amend the Missouri Constitution to allow the Gaming Commission to issue an additional gambling boat license to operate an excursion gambling boat on the Osage River between the Missouri River and Bagnell Dam. Well, now, any person who reads that is going to think, oh, cool, it's going to be on the Osage River.
Mm-hmm.
But have you seen the plans for where they're going to put the casino?
I've seen the plans. I can't picture it in. Is it on 242?
No. It's on Highway 54.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
In the old quarry.
Yep. Yeah, that's not on a river.
That's not on the river. No.
So
no.
how do they do that?
Well, because you have to read the language of the amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, the 13 casinos in Missouri have to be within 1,000 feet of the main channel of the Mississippi or the Missouri River. This 14th casino, if this amendment passes, would have to be within 500 feet of the 100-year floodplain.
Oh my.
Now, I know you're young,
Mm-hmm.
but you've lived in the area long enough. How old is Bagnell Dam?
Oh, I mean, what was it? The late 1800s that it was started?
No.
No.
1931.
Oh.
So 1931 to 2024 was how many years?
Yeah.
93 years.
Yep.
So a 100-year floodplain puts it 7 years before Bagnell Dam was built.
Mm-hmm.
Why was Bagnell Dam built? Yes, for electricity, but also for flood control. So, do you know, by putting the 500 feet from the 100-year floodplain would allow them to build in that quarry. There's an actual road between that quarry and the river. You're not getting any water from the river up there. That's not on the Osage River.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to say, like the other 13 casinos, that it had to be within 1,000 feet of the main channel, well, there's really not much place to put a casino.
Right.
Because of our hills and different things. So that's why I had to carve out a special definition for that here. The other thing is the 13 casinos on the Missouri and Mississippi rivers can be anywhere along the Missouri and Mississippi rivers.
Right.
Which means even though there is only one boat in one boat in Boonville, excuse me, if you go to Kansas City and St. Louis, you have boats next to each other, across the river from each other, within close proximity.
Mm-hmm.
And a boat in LaGrange or a boat in Boonville can move to a different location if they wanted to, etc. But this 14th license that they're talking about in Amendment 5 can only be used on the Osage River. And no other boats can be on the Osage River.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anybody who knows anything about economics would call that a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
Is a monopoly good for business?
Nope.
If you're the one that has the monopoly, it
Yeah.
is. For
Right.
everybody else, it's not.
Right.
You know, not that I want to see multiple casinos in the lake area, heaven forbid.
Right.
But as an as a from a purely economic fairness, I guess you would call it, is it right to create a monopoly for one entity and not a monopoly for others?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and, the question that I've had too is this amendment doesn't guarantee who's going to get the license. I mean, on our side of it, it's not guaranteeing it. So why would Bally's and Osage River Gaming be putting so much money towards getting a license if there wasn't some kind of assurance that they were going to get it? That doesn't make
Uh-huh.
sense.
We may never be able to track it down, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly convinced that there's already some deals that have been made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know who wrote the amendment for them?
I do not.
I was just curious
Sorry, I
about
can't
that.
answer that
No,
question.
that's fine. I was just curious. I'm slowly learning how to navigate the Secretary of State website. If you know where you're going, it's really easy. But if you don't fully know where you're going, it's really overwhelming because there's a lot of information there.
There's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
Well, um, I could look it up and get back with you on that because
Oh, that's
there's
okay.
on the Secretary of State's website where it talks about ballot petitions and amendments, ballot measures.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to know because, like, for now, it's been assigned Amendment 5,
Right.
but before it was certified, it had a different number, a petition number.
Oh, right.
And if you can make that connection, it's pretty easy to look it up.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and then it will tell you who filed that petition. But it's a lot of out-of-state money, just like Amendment 3 and Amendment 2 both have a lot of out-of-state money.
Yeah. So, what are
coming
your
in.
thoughts on that?
On out-of-state money,
Coming in
I think
to amend our Constitution?
I think it ought to be prohibited. Just flat out prohibit out-of-state money. I also know, like on some of these amendments, they have bussed in people from Florida and Pennsylvania and other places to do the signature gathering
Mm-hmm.
because they have to have so many signatures to get it on the petition,
Yep.
I've been told that to prohibit out-of-state money would be virtually impossible to pass, and even if you passed it, it would be almost impossible to enforce. But one thing that we could easily do, and I'd call upon all of our state legislators, Senate and House, to consider this. A person who is gathering signatures for an initiative petition must live and be a registered voter in the district they are gathering petitions.
I 100% agree. I had a lady from New York approach me at the Hy-Vee parking lot here at the lake and ask me to sign the petition. And she was very nice and she was honest. She told me exactly what she was gathering her signature for, unlike some other signature gatherers that we have tape of them lying about what they were gathering signatures for. But with her, and she's from New York. She just straight up told me, I'm from New York and I'm here gathering signatures because they paid her, I think, $25 an hour to come. And I was just like, that's so wrong. You're coming in from a completely different state to change my constitution. That should not be happening.
I had the same thing with the guy from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Approached me about signing a petition. And so if we would simply make it to where a person has to be a resident and registered voter of the district wherein they are gathering signatures, I think we could make some progress towards all of these initiative petitions and chaos.
Well, and I also...
And Missouri would be a more sovereign state, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. I also was honestly shocked when I talked to the Secretary of State's office about what the uh, rules were on gathering signatures and how low the percentages of signatures that you actually have to get. I always thought it was like this crazy amount of signatures. Well, no, it's 8% for a petition. It's 8% of voters that voted in the previous gubernatorial race. Not even 8% of voters, registered voters, just 8% of the people who actually voted. And, we all know there's what? Maybe on a good day, 30% of registered voters are actually voting. And so only 8% of that are the signatures that you even need to get this amendment put on the ballot. I mean, that's so ridiculous.
So,
That's such a low number.
right, you're talking 2.5%, 3% of the voters
Yep.
can put something on the ballot. And then you combine that with the deceptive ballot language and deceptive advertising,
Right.
and we have chaos.
Right.
I don't think that's what our founding fathers anticipated.
No, I mean, it's honestly the opposite. They made it absolutely doable to amend the Constitution, but very difficult, so that way people couldn't just amend it willy-nilly on whatever emotion they were feeling at the time. It had to be like, really, the country had to come together to amend it. It couldn't just be a couple of states doing it.
Right. Which is why there's a difference between the Constitution and statutes. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I know last spring when the legislature was discussing IP reform, and what we've got on this coming election in Amendment 7 would require a person to be a United States citizen in order to vote.
Right.
And there are people who say, well, it's already against the law for them to vote, for non-citizens to vote. Well, it's against the law because it's in the statute. But statutes can be changed very easily. The Constitution is, while it can be changed, it's supposed to be a more stable document that is an overarching guide for all of the statutes. And so Amendment 7 is simply moving the citizen requirement for voters from statute to the Constitution.
Right. I was curious. This is a little bit off track, but I'm gonna jump tracks because we're almost done.
Okay.
In the U.S. Constitution, you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. I believe. I might be incorrect on that. I haven't studied in depth in every article, but I believe that is in the Constitution. Does that only apply to federal elections then?
Yes.
I mean,
There's even been a few court cases recently. I don't remember if it was New Jersey, California, somewhere up in there. Somebody was, one state was going to begin allowing non-citizens to vote. And it went to court and everything. And the courts said, for local elections and even for state elections, if that's what you want to do, you can. But for federal elections, they have to be U.S. citizens.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that also, again, that's the way the founding fathers framed it, was we're going to make the laws for the country, and then the states have the ability to make the laws for their own state. Of course, it doesn't seem like that's even really being held to nationally. I mean, anyway, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have time for that, but
we can open up enough cans of worms to catch every fish in the lake. Maybe.
I know. That'd be nice. Be set for the winter.
And have a good fish fry in the process.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you feel like we still needed to cover before I release you?
Well, one more comment on Amendment 5 and the casino at the lake. It has absolutely no bearing on whether or not there will be an Indian casino at the lake. Passing Amendment 5 will not prevent an Indian casino.
Right.
Defeating Amendment 5 will not guarantee an Indian casino. They're two totally separate issues, two totally separate processes, and one has no bearing on the other.
Right.
So I would encourage our listeners to not give consideration to an Osage Indian casino as a factor in voting yes or no on Amendment 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most common things I hear all the time from people is, well, I don't really want a casino, but I'd rather have the private owned casino that we're actually, the lie, like we're actually going to get revenue from rather than the Indian casino. And so I'd rather just vote for the privately ran casino. And I just like, listen, if you don't want a casino, then fight against the casino. That doesn't mean I'm only
Right.
going to fight against one casino. Fight against both of them. I mean, this mentality of people that are like, well, we're going to get one either way, so I might as well just take this one. No, there's nothing
I
set
don't
in
want to get bit by a
stone.
rattlesnake, so I'm going to pick up a copperhead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that thought process at all, because if I think that something is bad for our community, I'm gonna keep fighting against it. I'm not gonna just give in to one side of it because I think it's better than the other one. At the end of the day, they're both casinos. They both bring the same issues into a community, and our community already has a lot of those issues. I don't think we need to add to it.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I actually, when Joe Rager was on the show a couple weeks ago, he had brought up an interesting point that there had been some case law, I can't remember what state it was, that actually allowing a casino to be put in a certain area, the private casino, it actually somewhat opened the door for the governor to then agree to declare that land okay for the Indian casino. I don't know. I'm sure that you talked with him about that a little
Yeah,
bit,
do
and I thought
remember
that was
something about that.
interesting.
Yeah, the Indian casino thing. There's several different aspects of that. Some of which we have no control over, like the United States Department of Interior.
Right.
You know, some things. Electing a governor who would not favor an Indian casino
Right.
would be very helpful. But I can tell you this: if we allow one Indian casino anywhere in the state of Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
we cannot say no to any others.
Yep.
They'll have free reign to do whatever they want.
Yeah. And yeah, they will. I mean, that's what's happened in other states for sure.
And the Osage Nation claiming that this is their ancestral lands or whatever, they actually sold
Mm-hmm.
all rights and claims to the land. It was the Treaty of Fort Osage back in 1830 or something like that. I don't remember. And so they're it'd be like me saying, well, I'm going to go back to my family farm. My great grandfather sold this farm, but it's my ancestral farm, so I want it back.
Right. Yeah, it's mine.
No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry.
Yeah. And that, again, is another reason why it's so important to know actual history, so that way you can, hopefully prevent the same kind of things from happening in the future, or protect your future.
Correct.
So, agreed. Alrighty. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit. I hope that people will take these things into consideration and they will not just follow along with whatever sounds good, because usually if it sounds good, it's not true. It's not true.
That's true.
But, well,
Yeah,
thank you again. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time and your knowledge.
Well, thank you, Nadine. I'm glad we can get the word out on this and educate our voters.
Absolutely.
Let them make an informed decision.
Absolutely. That's 100% why I do this show.
Well, I appreciate it. You're doing a good work. Keep it up.
Thanks, Timothy. I'll talk to you later.
Okay,
All
bye.
right, bye. Yeah, that's like I've said many times. I am doing this show, one, because I believe that God gave me the platform. And so I stepped out in faith, even though it was something I had never done before. And because I know there are thousands of people like me all over our country who weren't involved in politics, didn't know what was going on, and then started to kind of wake up one day and realize that things were going to change drastically for the worse if I didn't start doing something about it, if I didn't speak up, and if I didn't vote educated. So I'm trying to educate myself more and more every day. Sometimes I don't really like what I'm learning, but you take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I keep my focus on the truth, which is, in the end, Jesus Christ wins. And in the meantime, I try and live to be a good steward of all that he's given. So I fully believe that means being educated in what's going on in the world around you, so that way you can share truth into that world. You can be salt and light. You can bring hope where there seems to be no hope, because there is a definite lack of hope, especially among young people. And, that's a shame, because as followers of Christ, we should be full of hope, and we should be sharing that hope with others. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world around us. God still gives us hope from within. And that's what helps propel me to stay in the fight, because one, I know that this world is not my home. And two, I know that no matter what happens in this world, I'm on the winning side, because Jesus Christ is my savior. And I want to share that hope with other people, along with bringing the truth that says, no, if you are born a female, you are a female. And maybe you don't feel like that right now, but let's talk about it, and let's work through this, and let's work to heal from the inside out, instead of just saying, yeah, let's take you to change to be a male then. Because that's not working. And more money does not fix things. More power doesn't usually fix things. You have to change from within first. So I hope that you will take the time to share the show today. It will be uploaded to Nadine at 9, my YouTube channel, this afternoon. And as always, you can find me on Friday mornings here at Dam Radio, Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Arts Studio. And tomorrow, I'm actually going to be doing a special interview with a lady that has moved here from Washington, who was really kind of appalled when she found out what Amendment 3 was, and the fact that they moved from Washington to Missouri to try and get away from the crap. And it's here, people. So I will be talking with her at 12 tomorrow. That's Saturday at Dam Radio. So tune into that. And then I'll also have it uploaded to my YouTube channel as well, Nadine at 9, so you can catch it then. But this information has to get out. People have to know what the truth is, so that way they can make educated decisions that are best for their family and the future of their families. Because remember, it's not an instant gratification election. We have to make decisions that are going to get us closer to our goal for a better future. So remember, 25 days till the election, and get out and vote. Get educated, listen to my show, listen to other shows, and just remember that until next time, let's not act like children. See you next week.